He said, I could understand if your name was like Arlen Ness or one of the big names in the industry. I'm like, hey, you know what? Maybe someday I'll be big in the motorcycle industry, but that's just the way it's going to be. And he said, no. So I was like, all right.
There's a story that gets repeated in comment sections and car forums. A version where a young shop hand named Jesse James threw a punch, walked out of one of the most respected hot rod shops in America, and never looked back. It shows up in a handful of places online, never with a name attached to the other side of that fight, never with a date, never with a source who actually saw it happen. So today we're doing something a little different. We're not just going to tell you what happened between Jesse James and Boyd Coddington. We're going to show you why the story most people believe might not be the real one at all. Before any of that, you need to understand who Boyd Coddington actually was. By the late 1980s, Coddington already had a reputation most builders spend a lifetime chasing. He opened his own shop, Hot Rods by Boyd, back in 1977. And within a few years, his cars were winning the biggest awards in the hot rod world. Builders called it the Boyd look. Clean lines, machined wheels, a level of finish nobody else was doing at the time. If you wanted to learn from the best in the business, this was the shop to be in. And in the late 1980s, that's exactly where a young motorcycle builder named Jesse James ended up. He wasn't a nobody. James had already landed a few magazine covers building custom bikes on his own. So when he walked into Boyd's shop at 24 years old, he thought he already knew what he was doing. That didn't last long. James has said in interviews that working alongside Coddington reset what he thought he understood about the craft. He's described Boyd's eye for lines, hardware, and finish as unlike anything he'd seen before. Being in your 20s, inside the best hot rod shop in the country, learning from the man who basically wrote the modern rule book, that's an experience most builders never get.
And I said, hey, can I talk to you about something? Like, Boyd Coddington just offered me a job. I was 23.
Right.
Offered me a job to go work at Hot Rods by Boyd. I don't know what to do. He's all, if you don't take that job, I'll never talk to you again. I went in and gave notice. And we're all shaky chin and like gave my notice and went to work for Boyd. And it was like, I thought I was the man because I had built a few bikes.
So if the mentorship meant that much to him, here's the question worth sitting with. What would make someone walk away from that? This is where the story splits. One version, the one that shows up in a handful of online write-ups, says James quit after some kind of physical altercation with a colleague at the shop, a single punch thrown, and James walking out for good not long after. It's a dramatic detail. It's also one we could only trace back to secondary aggregator articles, and none of them name who the fight was actually with. Not Coddington, not anyone specific, just a colleague. No interview with James backs this up. No account from anyone who worked at the shop confirms it either. So before we go further, here's the real question this video is actually about. If there wasn't a fight, why did Jesse James really leave Boyd Coddington's shop? The answer, in James's own words, has nothing to do with conflict at all. It comes down to a number. James has said in more than one interview that he was making around $700 a week working for Coddington. At the same time, he was moonlighting at night in his own garage, building custom fenders for other customers. Those fenders were bringing in closer to $15,000 a week. Read that gap again. That's not a disagreement. That's not a fight. That's a young builder doing the math and realizing he was leaving money on the table every day he stayed.
In like 93, I really started to like learn metalwork and then like came back and I'm like, man, I want to make a fender on my own. And so I started making fenders in my garage after work. And so it got crazy. I was like selling them for like $700 or $800 a piece. And I was like making $700 a week salary working for Hot Rods by Boyd. And then I was making 15 grand a week welding in my garage at night. And so then I started to sell to distributors so they could go global. Well, I got a I left Boyd's, I'm making fenders and building bikes on my own, and I got a fax machine in the shop. And that sound, like, you know, the fax coming through. And I remember like $125,000 purchase order came over and it was like just me. I didn't have any employees or nothing. I'm like, oh, how am I gonna do this? And like, so
which version actually explains why Jesse James left? A punch nobody can source, or a paycheck that speaks for itself? Here's the part that really undercuts the falling out story. If this had ended badly, you'd expect James to go quiet about Coddington, or worse, bitter. That's not what happened. In more than one interview since, James has called Coddington one of the most important mentors of his career, in the same breath as legendary hot rod builder John Butera. He's described his time at the shop as some of the best years of his working life, and said he made friendships there that lasted decades. And in 2012, 4 years after Coddington passed away, James appeared as himself on Season 5 of Chasing Classic Cars in an episode built around Boyd Coddington's legacy. People don't usually show up to honor someone they were still angry at. By 1992, James had gone out on his own, starting what would become West Coast Choppers out of almost nothing. No loan, no business partner, just a corner of a friend's garage and the skills he picked up from Boyd. Within a decade, that shop was building bikes for Shaquille O'Neal and Kid Rock. And by 2002, James was hosting Monster Garage on Discovery, becoming one of the most recognizable names in the entire custom vehicle world. None of that happens without the 2 years he spent inside Boyd Coddington's shop first. Maybe that's the actual story worth telling here. Not a fight that ended a partnership that, honestly, never really was one. James was an employee, not a partner. But a mentorship that quietly built the foundation for one of the biggest names the custom industry has ever seen. The rumor gave you a fight. The truth gave you a paycheck, a decision, and a friendship that outlasted the man who taught him. Sometimes that's just how the real story goes. Not louder, just true.